Okay, so here we are. This is technically part 3 on YouTube of Pythagorean Theorem. So I had to kind of break up what I thought was part 1 into 2 sections because it was too long. Who knew that I talked that much? You guys probably did, actually. Anyway, I like to give a lot of examples, so I can't help it. If I need to make a bunch of videos for one skill, I'll do that. It's free. So anyway, we were talking about Pythagorean Theorem. And we basically went through what Pythagorean theorem is. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we talked about each of those letters, where they come from, where they are on the actual right triangle itself. Okay, and we use this when we are trying to find a missing side of a right triangle. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next 10 to 14 minutes or so is look at some example problems from the worksheets that I emailed out today. Okay, so let me get this pulled up here, share my screen. All right, so starting with this worksheet, there it is, Pythagorean Theorem. This gives you a little bit of an explanation as to what Pythagorean Theorem is, kind of its origins there at the beginning. Tells you the same things that I just showed you in that last video, but here you are, you have it, you can read it. Gives you some examples on how to do each of those two kinds of problems. And then we get to our actual problems, okay? Now this, actually, I noticed that none of the worksheets I sent you today have answer keys. So that's a little bit of a problem. Sorry about that. If you finish a worksheet and you want to know what the answers are, I will get them to you, okay? So, but one thing about this worksheet is at the bottom of each page, I'll show you here, there are these bubbles. The correct answers are down there. Now they've got some thrown in that are not part of any problems, but if you find your answer down at the bottom, then you got it right, okay? All right, let's do a couple problems. So number 1, 7 feet and 3 feet. All right, this is all going. So number 1 is definitely a right triangle. Looks very much like the triangle that I used as an example. A little taller maybe. Okay. So here's the problem. 7 feet, 3 feet. Remember, maybe somewhere on your paper at the top, just write down Pythagorean theorem. You don't have to memorize the theorem. When you take the math section of the task test, they give you a formula sheet. On that formula sheet, they have Pythagorean theorem. It's even labeled as such. So later in this video, I will show you, maybe I'll show you the formula sheet. I can't remember if I have that on file or not. So anyway, it is on there though. And so you don't have to have it memorized. You just have to know when to use it and how to use it, okay? So look at the problem, 7 and 3. First thing we need to ask ourselves is what sides do we have, okay? So in this one we have both of the legs. We have what makes the 90-degree angle. We have A and B in this problem. So we're going to put in 7 and 3 for A and B, okay? And from here, it's algebra. 7 squared is 49. 3 squared is 9 equals c squared, okay? We're going to go ahead and combine our numbers. 49 plus 9 is 58. Remember that equals c squared. This is not 58. It can't be 10 or higher. It must be less than 10, since that's what these add up to. Okay, so last step is always square root. What is the square root of 58? Let me get my phone, pull up my calculator, turn to the side. On mine, you hit the number first. So 58 and then hit the square root symbol. 7.615. So we'll just call it 7.6. Okay. So C, this side would be roughly 7.6. Remember, it's the larger of the three sides, and it is larger, not larger than them combined though. So 7.6 is C. Let's go back to our sheet. Look at the bottom. There it is, 7.6. Okay, so we know we got that correct. Since I'm right here, I'll zoom in a little bit. Why don't you try number 9? Or I'm sorry, number 6. Try number 6. Go ahead and pause the video on a piece of paper, or if you've printed the worksheet out, go ahead and work this one out on your own. Okay, and then when you're finished, go ahead and unpause and check with what we're doing here. This one's a little bit slanted this way. There's the angle. Okay. 23 meters. 45 meters. They're calling that X. That's what we're trying to find. Okay. So we're back. Okay. So we see it's a right triangle. We see we have two sides. We're missing the third. The question we should be asking ourselves is, what sides do we have? What side is missing? Okay. Do we have legs, or do we have the hypotenuse? So we find the right angle. Okay, here's the right angle. Remember, the right angle is made from the two legs. So when I look at my legs, I notice one of my legs is missing. I'm looking for a leg. I'm looking for either A or B, doesn't matter. So we'll just call that A. I don't know A, so I'm leaving as A squared. My other leg is 23. That replaces the B. And my 45, remember, is across from the right angle. So that is always my C, my hypotenuse. Now I'm going to have to get my calculator to do these calculations. But from here, it's just algebra. 23 squared is 529. 45 squared is 2025. Bring this down. Okay, now following our algebra, remember we're trying to isolate A squared. So 529, I need to get rid of it. Subtract 529. Do it to the other side to keep it balanced. So 2025 minus 529 is 1496. Bring down. Okay, what's left here? A squared. Remember the last step? Always the last step for Pythagorean theorem. We need to do the opposite of squaring a number. The opposite of squaring a number is square rooting a number. So square root A squared to get A. Square root 1496. $38.678, so we'll just say 38.7. All right, I think this worksheet's rounding to the nearest tenth, so we would stop there. But roughly 38.7 meters. Okay, let's check that with our rules. What we know is that's a leg, so it should not be the longest side, and it's not. What we said was the hypotenuse is the longest, and that's true. What we do know, though, is if we take our leg here of 38 and 23 together, those are longer than the 45. So it meets both of those rules. Okay? All right. Hopefully you got that one right. Now we've done one of each section, each kind. So let's kind of keep moving here. Oh, that's that whole worksheet. Oh, did we look at the bottom and see what do we get? 38.7. So look at the bottom of that first page. 38 point, oh, there it is, 38.7 right there. So we know we got it right. Okay, so that's a pretty good packet. Let's look at another one here. Okay, so here's another packet that I sent out. This is a pretty good packet too. It starts with you labeling the right triangle. So there's your vocabulary box. Legs, hypotenuse, right angle, and opposite. Let you guys work that out. Here they're having you find the hypotenuse, okay? And so the best way for you to do that again is find the right angle. So take a look at number 1 here. We find the right angle. The right angle always looks like a corner. So here's the corner, okay? The hypotenuse is always going to be opposite of this corner. So we go across, that means this here would be the hypotenuse, okay? That's pretty good practice for finding the hypotenuse. There's just some kind of facts you can look at. These are some common Pythagorean triples, which just means numbers that satisfy Pythagorean theorem. You'll kind of get to see several of these come up. This page, we are starting by determining if they make a right triangle. Okay, so they're giving you all 3. Let's take a look at number 3 here and just see what they're expecting us to do. All right, so does the 3 numbers 8, 12, and 13 make a right triangle? That's the question. 8, 12, and 13 make a right triangle. Stop share. 8, 12, and 13. So if we want to know if that makes a right triangle, we put them in Pythagorean theorem. Anytime you hear right triangle, Pythagorean theorem should be part of your thought process. It's not necessarily going to be used, but it very well could be, okay? So remember, Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Plug them in. Which one would be a, b, and c? Remember, c is always the longest. This happens to be in order, but it doesn't have to be. So this would be our a and our b. This would be our c, okay? Bring everything down. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now let's just work this out. If it's true, if it makes a true statement, then that's a right triangle. 8 squared, 64. 12 squared is 144. 13 squared is 169. So now we got to ask ourselves, does 64 and 144 make 169? It doesn't. This would not be a right triangle, okay? Now, what I do know would be a right triangle, what would be Pythagorean triples would be 5, 12, and 13, okay? If we put 5 in instead of 8 and work it out, 25 plus 149, if you do the math, it equals 169. And so if we put these numbers in and it makes a true statement, then it's a right triangle because it satisfies Pythagorean theorem, okay?